On October 20th, The Snowman, a thriller starring Michael Fassbender, helmed by Tomas Alfredsson, the director of the original Let the Right One In and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, is set to open in American theaters. That release is somewhat marred though, as the entertainment media is filled with headlines of the director explaining why the movie sucks before it even opens. Also, many are taken aback by the perceived concept. If your only past exposure is to the trailer, you'll know it is based on some mystery bestseller you have likely never heard about, and you may wonder about the setting and why J.K. Simmons speaks so weird in it. If you have heard about, or even read the novel, you may wonder, what's with the name? And how could an adaptation of such an excellent novel fare so poorly with professional critics? All shall be explained. In this video, I'll provide some background on the Nordic Noir genre as a whole, how the novel The Snowman, its author and lead character rose to fame, what's with the name, the director's excuse for why the movie isn't all that, and finally, my take on where a production with such prolific A-listers really went wrong to get the beating from critics it has been getting. Nordic Noir, or Scandinavian Noir, is crime fiction in novels, movies or TV series written by Scandinavian authors taking place in Scandinavian countries. The Scandinavian countries are typically ranked at or very near the top spot of various prosperity and human development indexes published annually by the UN. By contrast, the US and UK tend to be somewhere in the top 20 of these same lists. But despite statistics and the outwardly appearance of equality, progression, liberalism, and everything that goes with it, there is pushback, duplicity, and overall rot just underneath the surface, which is excellent crime fiction fodder. Crime literature became popular in Scandinavia in the 70s, and has only gotten more popular with time. With Swedish author Stieg Larsson's books, featuring Lisbeth Salander, Scandinavian Noir saw major mainstream commercial success outside of Nordic borders. The floodgates opened. Not only did audiences around the world suddenly get increased access to the original Scandinavian novels and TV series, British and American remakes were increasingly happening. I mentioned Stieg Larsson's Lisbeth Salander, the lead of the Millennium Trilogy, of which The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is the first chapter. That only became a trilogy because Stieg Larsson died before he had finished his planned 10 novels in the Millennium series, and so the adventures of Lisbeth Salander and Mikael Nyqvist were cut short. For many, it was Stieg Larsson and his character Lisbeth Salander, whom he by the way imagined as a real-life Pippi Longstocking all grown up, that was that initial gateway into Nordic Noir. Pastiches featuring Salander would eventually happen, but after that initial Millennium Trilogy hype, and with no more Stieg Larsson novels to mine from, another author soon became the emerging literary gateway. Norwegian author Jo Nesbø. After ACL injuries ended his professional football career in his youth, that's soccer to you Americans, Jo Nesbø instead became a financial analyst and a stockbroker. He had more artistic aspirations though, so while working full-time as a stockbroker back in the 1990s, he spent his evenings on his band Derre, where he served as a singer, guitar player, writer and frontman. He was actually pretty successful in this, as his band did achieve mainstream success and topped the Norwegian charts several times over back in the 90s. Despite this success, he did not quit his day job, something he had promised his mother not to do. The outcome of that was that for 1 year, he toured Norway with his band at night, while working full-time as a stockbroker during the day. This did take a toll though, and after that year, he needed a break. From the stockbroking and the touring that is, because by this time, he had instead set his sights on writing. While on a 5-week vacation in Australia, he made the first draft of what was to become his first novel, released in 1997, The Bat. An instant hit, the novel would not only establish him as an author to be reckoned with, it featured the first appearance of a brilliant detective with the Oslo Police Department, a man who struggles with both alcohol and his own demons, Harry Hole. Actually, it is pronounced Harry Hole, so you don't really have that double meaning in Norwegian. The character is named after a footballer the author admired, Harry Herstad, and the local sheriff where the author grew up, Torstein Hole. The surname Hole is derived from a historic Norwegian town. Go back in time 1,000 or so years, and the Old Norse form of the name Hole would have been Hull. The Vikings brought that word and its meaning with them to what is now the UK, where it would evolve to its modern English form, hill. The surname Hole is every bit as common in Norway as its anglicised equivalent Hill is in the US and UK. Harry, on the other hand, is hardly a traditional Norwegian name, and like many other names, it does suggest the social standing of those choosing it. Norwegians who name their kids Harry, or Roger, or Tommy, or something like that, tend to be the Norwegian equivalents of hicks, yokels, or other lower working class groups. So such a name does suggest where anyone holding it at the very least started out, although not necessarily where they end. In the novels, Harry Hole is a chain smoker and addicted to alcohol. His private life is mostly in shambles, and he is frequently in conflict with his superiors and colleagues at the police department. But through it all, he is a brilliant detective, and one of few in the force to have undergone special training in interrogation techniques and firearms from the FBI. This would be the real American FBI, there's no such thing in Scandinavia. In hand-to-hand combat though, he'll more often than not end up getting his ass kicked. Another major character in the stories is the city of Oslo, which is depicted with warts and all. As of 2017, Jo Nesbø has written 11 novels featuring Harry Hole, which have been translated to more than 40 languages and sold over 30 million copies worldwide. The Snowman is the 7th book in the series, but arguably one of the more cinematic, if you will, and is as such the first to be adapted into a feature film. In The Snowman, Hole has reason to suspect that a number of killings spanning years are linked, and that the Oslo Police Department are dealing with Norway's first serial killer. His colleagues of course don't believe him, because they're in Norway, and nothing that exciting ever happens there. Just because he went on special training on the other side of the fjord is no reason to let his imagination run wild, is the mindset among his colleagues. Eventually though, there can be no denying that they are in fact dealing with the serial killer, one who marks his murder sites with a snowman, and who targets young mothers. As Hole begins to delve into the private lives of the victims, he discovers a disturbing common feature. What is more, the killer seems to have a fascination with Hole himself, and soon his family. Like David Fincher's film version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Snowman is set in and filmed on the locations depicted in the novel that inspired it, which in this case would be Oslo and Bergen. The movie features an international cast led by Michael Fassbender as Harry Hole, and a supporting cast consisting of Rebecca Ferguson, Charlotte Gainsbourg, Val Kilmer, J.K. Simmons, and Toby Jones. These are all portraying Norwegian characters, which is why some have put on a slight accent, signaling to the audience that the characters are meant to be speaking Norwegian. This is however never done as excessively as in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Michael Fassbender himself does not put on any accent, not even when saying the name of the character. To summarize, with that cast, the director of critically acclaimed hits, and a best-selling novel as source material, the movie should on paper have every chance of success, both with critics and at the box office. It even has Martin Scorsese as marquee executive producer, for whatever that is worth. Early reviews, however, have not been kind. The movie has been released in Europe, where reviews have been decidedly mixed to negative. The Norwegian reviewers have for the most part read the novel, and a common complaint among them is that while the novel is a fast-paced and exciting page-turner, the movie emphasizes atmosphere and mood over pace, while significant portions of the novel, portions many seem to agree were critical, have been left out of the movie. In other words, director Tomas Alfredsson seemingly had a very different vision for his movie than author Jo Nesbø had for the best-selling book. When asked to respond to the criticism, director Alfredsson told the Norwegian Broadcast Corporation NRK that the shooting schedule in Norway had been too short, and that they discovered in the editing bay that they were missing about 10 to 15% of the movie they set out to make. They eventually, and rather suddenly if the director is to be believed, got more money, and they were able to shoot additional photography in London. As a side note, the movie was also criticized in Norway for getting the geography wrong, as the road connecting key locations in the movie is not the same road connecting them in real life, to which the director responded he didn't give a shit. I will have to agree with him there, because no one but commuters on that road are going to notice. Once you've seen one desolate road in the eastern part of Norway, you've seen pretty much all of them. That aside, his comments do not reflect kindly on either himself as director or the producers overseeing the whole production. Missing footage would serve to explain some of the complaints from the critics who are familiar with the source material, but this isn't a student film. It is a major release from a major distributor. There is no excuse for releasing an unfinished product. The director did not go into detail about how they could possibly have failed to shoot as much as 15% of the movie and not notice until they were in the editing bay. How could they not notice before? Were not several sections of the script still marked as unfilmed? Could they not have scheduled in the necessary reshoots for a later date, the moment when they saw they had too little time to finish everything during principal photography? This movie was, after all, filmed between January and April of 2016. That's a year and a half ago. Even if Fassbender's schedule precluded extending principal photography, they could surely have returned for pickups later in 2016 or early 2017, when the weather conditions would have been similar. In the interview, the director does not specify how much of the missing footage they were able to shoot during the pickups in London. Is the movie still missing 15%? 10%? We don't know. But even with the additional footage from London, they must have struggled to lock down a final edit, as evidenced by the presence of 2 editors in the credits. Several things have obviously gone wrong here. A major one is that the director set out to film a very different movie than the one the source material lent itself to. But the bigger failure is in planning. First and foremost, they did not properly plan that principal photography on location. If they had, they would not only have known that something was missing, they would have known what. Knowing that, they could have planned for it earlier. It was a year and a half between principal photography and release, so there was plenty of time to do the necessary reshoots, wherever in the world they needed to be filmed. That they obviously didn't boggles the mind. There is no shame in reshooting or doing extensive pickups to salvage a movie. Like the girl with the dragon tattoo before it, the Snowman is an intended franchise starter. If the Snowman is a hit, the plan is to continue the story of Harry Hole on film, as there are 10 more books to adapt and more still to come. But will it, like the girl with the dragon tattoo before it, also fail to launch? Or will audiences disagree with the critics and be won over by the visuals and the atmosphere? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and check out my review of The Snowman on our sister channel, Midnight's Edge After Dark.
If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button. Join us for spin-free news and analysis of the happenings and corporate politics behind the scenes of your favorite genre movies, as well as explorations of your favorite characters and their backgrounds and context here at Midnight's Edge.